Shalom Aleichem. Hilchot Deot. Rabbeinu Gadol. Rambam. Perek Shishi. Halacha Yod or Halacha Yod Daled. I will now share the screen with you. You should be able to see Halacha Yod Daled here, marked in blue. So we begin. Hayav Adam Lizaher B'Yitomim V'Almanoth. A person is obligated to be particularly sensitive when dealing with orphans or widows. Because it is normally the case, for obvious reasons, that orphans, children without a father, are at a great social disadvantage in all respects, in every possible sense. First of all, they feel the lack of a father, which is necessary for a child to develop and grow properly, mentally, spiritually, psychologically, and also very often physically, financially. And a child who knows that he has no father, and by the way, this is true to sometimes to a lesser extent and sometimes to a greater extent, with regards to a child whose parents were divorced, and the father, for various reasons, is not really in contact with the children. This can happen for all kinds of reasons. In such a case, it is not entirely analogous to, but it is similar to a situation where a child has lost the father altogether, where the father died. So we can include and should this reality in our discussion, because it is most definitely germane. So Yithomim nafsham shefala limaod uruhan nemucha. They are lowly in spirit. Excuse me. They feel this loss and the fact that they are different from others. Imagine a boy, let's say a 10-year-old boy, and his mother says to him, well, Shabbat morning, go to shul and go to the Beth Knesset. And this boy knows that he goes to the Beth Knesset, he's on his own. Very often that's the case, unless there are some men who are very aware of the situation and go out of their way to adopt him, as it were, and take him under their wing. But frequently that's not the case. And this boy feels, you can imagine how the boy feels. And it's not a good start in life. And this again can happen both in the case where the father passed away, so it can happen in the case where the father is simply not to be found, or to be found rarely. That's with regards to Yithomim. And with regards to Almanoth, a widow obviously is likely to feel this way. It's true that women at the present time are more able, in many cases, not all cases, in many cases, they are more able to survive financially without a husband. But first of all, that's only true in some cases, not in all cases. It's usually the case that even if they survive, their standard of living, their financial reality is much more challenging, shall we say, than that of a woman living in a normal, stable, married household. And there's also, of course, the emotional side of a widow's life, existence. So for these reasons, we have to be very sensitive and very caring with regards to such people. And that's why Rambam stresses, even if it happens to be the case that they have lots of money. That can also happen. Let's say the father did pass away, but he left a fortune. Yes, okay, the child is provided for financially, even well above the average. But there are serious lacunae in this child's life. And therefore, Rambam says, even the orphans or the widow of the king who passed away, muzharim, we are commanded by this mitzvah to take special note of them and be very sensitive to their needs and their likelihood that they will feel discriminated against or hard done by. Shneimar kol almana uyathor lo ta'anun. As the pasuk says in Parashat Mishpatim, Shemot Kaf Beth, we are not to cause pain, any kind of suffering, to either an almana, a widow, or an orphan. So what do we do? This is now Halakha Tetwa. V'he'ach no'avim imahen, lo yadaber alehan ela rakof. One always speaks to them only in the most gentle way. V'lo inhog bahen ela minhag kavod. And one must always treat them with great respect, because these people naturally feel inferior or lower in status, and therefore we have to, as a countermeasure, as a counterweight, we have to make them feel that they are our equals and that we respect them. We don't look down on them in any way. We should not overwork them if they happen to be working for us. Not their body, nor their soul, not their heart. In other words, we should not be in any way harsh towards them. And a person should take great care with regards to their belongings, their property, even more than he does with regards to his own property and his own belongings. This is still a chayov in some books now, and in others, as we see here on the screen. Kol hamaknitan, halachat tezayin, kol hamaknitan or hamachisan. Laknit is to trouble in the emotional sense, to pain them in the emotional, psychological sense, or amachisan makes them angry, or hichiv liban, or causes them pain, or radabahem, or dealt with them as a master to the servant, or radabahem, or ibed mamonan, or caused them their property to be lost, to be damaged. In other words, you could have prevented financial loss. You could have looked out for them in some way, but you chose not to do so. A person who does this is transgressing the negative commandment that we just mentioned. And it goes without saying that he who strikes them physically or curses them explicitly is over the same miswat, is guilty of the same. And this negative miswa, even though there is no malkuyot, there is no corporal punishment that pertains to this avera. But the onesh, that doesn't mean that if there is no malkuyot, there is no corporal punishment that can be administered by the Beit Din to someone who clearly transgressed against such people. That does not mean that it is not a very serious offense. This is true of many things in the Torah, by the way. For various reasons, certain things do not come explicitly with a clear type of form of punishment. But this does not mean necessarily that it is therefore not a very serious matter. Not at all. In this case, we see in those Pesukim over there, it says in, you should look up this Pasuk for a moment. Here, Shemot Perek Kaf Beth. Here it says, this is mentioned, of course, juxtaposed, the mention of the almanah and the yathom, the widow and the orphan, is mentioned in juxtaposition to the ger, the ger tzedek, who joins the Jewish people, as it says over here, the ger often also feels alone. He's often without family. And perhaps also few friends, few people know him, and he can easily feel slighted or ignored and alone. Simply, quite practically, in reality, he can be very alone. And that's why there is such a mitzvah with regards to the ger tzedek, to the convert. And this something similar applies to the almanah and the yathom. Kol almanah yathom lo ta'anun. We are not to cause them grief in any way, to pain them. But if you do so, they will, if they cry out to me, I will hear their cry. In other words, the Torah bears witness to the fact that the pain, the cry, the suffering of the almanah yathom, as it were, gets special treatment. And the result will be, and I will be very angry against you, and I will strike you down by the sword. So that's definitely a serious punishment. And I will turn your wives into widows and your children into orphans. So we shouldn't think for a moment that it's a light matter. It is not. Rambam now says in Halakha Yod Zayin, which is also Halakha Yod in other books, Barith Karaf Lahem, Misha Amar Uhaya Ha'olam. He who, by speaking, as it were, created all things. Misha Amar Uhaya Ha'olam. An expression with which we are familiar from the Tefillah, from the beginning of Pesukei the Zimra, an expression which Chazal use not infrequently. Hashem declared and made it a fixed aspect of the Bria, of the created reality. It is one of the laws, Dinei Shamayim, that apply to the created reality of this world. Shekol Zaman Shehem Tha'akim Mehamas, if they cry out because of that which is being done to them, because people are mistreating them, even ignoring them, not caring about them, Hen Na'anim, they will be answered. Their prayer is again, it receives special treatment. Shene'emar ki im tha'oki thak elai shema' eshma' sa'aklatho, as we just read in the pasuk. Rambam now says in the last halacha yodheth, Bamed devarim amurim, when is this the case? Bizman she'ina otham l'sorchei asmo. If a person, this is all true and all relevant, if the person mistreated these people, spoke to them harshly, was insensitive to them, etc., for his own reasons, for his own purposes, not because of any ulterior motive, which may be a positive motive, as we're about to see. But let's say a Rav is teaching children Torah in school, in the Talmud Torah, and there's a child that is an orphan. On the one hand, he should be particularly sensitive with regards to this child. On the other hand, he has a job to perform, a very important one, and that requires the application of discipline. I know that's a dirty word nowadays, discipline, but it just happens to be the case that without discipline, human society unravels, as we all see quite plainly in the world around us. And the best example of this is in the school. I remember seeing some years ago in more than one British newspaper, I believe, a study was done amongst British school teachers, primary school, high school, people who had taught in schools before the law was changed with regards to corporal punishment in schools, which was at some point in the 80s, I believe, the Minyanim, and had continued teaching after that time. And the vast majority all stated explicitly and openly that you could not compare the atmosphere in the classroom, the ability to teach, to run an educational institution. This change in policy, which is based on false rahmanut, mercy, as it were, compassion, has destroyed education. That is generally the reality. So if the Rav has to teach this child and even has to discipline him, Torah, or umanuth, or the child, or might be a teenager, is apprenticing with someone in a certain trade. Let's say he's learning to be a blacksmith. Again, he has to be trained and he has to be sometimes disciplined and maybe shouted at. Or we're talking about someone who finds himself in the position of having to step into the breach in place of the father, shall we say, to discipline the child, to convey to him that certain things are unacceptable, and this is how you should behave. And this you may not do. If it's in that context, then it is mutar, because these things are very important. They are essential, and they trump this this isur. So we see that sensitivity is very important. Feelings are important, but values and truth are more important. That which is correct, that which is true, that which is necessary is more important and more weighs more heavily than feelings. That's a general rule of thumb.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.